Welcome back to Sun, Sand, and Soul. Josh Tomey, David Haber here with Daniela Marquez. We're having a great conversation about CondoCONNECT, an organization that Daniela founded and is really bringing community associations like condo associations together with legislators, city officials, industry professionals. And Daniela, we've been talking a lot about Senate Bill 4D and, its fallout. And, we've talked a lot about it on the show and how could we not? But I think it's interesting that the senators who both sponsored it and continue to be the executors of this bill are clearly, from my perspective, in a position where they're having to say, look, the bill is what it is. The laws have been passed. It has to be followed. And there's not a lot of, I don't detect a lot of sort of weakening in their position around that. I heard that myself at one of the CondoCONNECT events from Senator Pizzo, and understandably so. But do you feel like over time, both since its passage and now into, the practical application of the law, any of those attitudes have shifted when they've seen it work, when they've seen it in play? Has there been any change in either tone or tactic from your perspective?
That was a long question.
With this specific issue, I think their main concern is that an incident similar to what happened with Surfside never happens again. But you never know. I don't think the law is going to change in terms of not being proactive and reserving and securing the repairs for these condos. But you never know what will happen in the consequences beginning next year when everybody has to fully fund their reserves.
I think the consequences, I've said this, I think the consequences are more terminations of condominiums. I think
and I guess that's my point, what happens
say,
if that becomes a tidal wave of terminations?
Well, I think there will be a tidal wave, but I also think that they need to change the law to raise the percentage of people who can block it, because currently 5% can block a termination. And I've written articles, specifically a Miami Herald editorial, that they need to raise the percentage to block to like 15% or
right. You've been a big
20%, right? Because otherwise you have this super minority stopping 90% of the people who want to terminate.
Right.
That's crazy.
But does that not, on the other hand, open up even more terminations that then become economically inviable for the industry or the state itself? I mean, we know the amount of tax base in Florida that's driven out of community associations is enormous.
I know, but I think what's going to end up happening is you're going to have these people with these great views that they paid $200,000 for, and they're going to sell them from $500,000 to $1.5 million. And some of them are going to have to go into lower end condos off the water. They're going to have to go to multifamily rentals, but they're going to pocket some money.
Right.
I just don't see them staying where they are without having to pay the piper for the repairs.
Right.
And they can't all afford the repairs.
Right. So Danielle, it sounds to me like you're saying it's still a wait and see because it just hasn't been enough time. And by the close of the year or into next year, you think that at least the tone may change a little depending on what happens?
Yeah. Again, the meaning of the bill that is to be proactive and funding for these structural items, I don't think that meaning or that goal is going to change. But maybe in a couple years when everybody gets used to and the mentality change, people they have made some changes.
Right. Does CondoCONNECT take any stance on these laws or issues, or are you really just there to bring people together and whatever happens, happens? Or do you advocate for a position?
I think I advocate for the legislators to hear the managers, the board members, and the homeowners. I advocate for them to hear every point of view.
But you don't take a particular point of view yourself, and CondoCONNECT doesn't say,
no.
You don't lobby the legislators to say, I think you ought to do this or do that.
No. I think we would love to get deeper into talking to them, but bringing people. We don't want to be the one lobbying for a specific bill, but we think that the legislators, it helps for them to hear the people that are living a day-to-day.
So you're a facilitator. You're not a lobbyist.
I'm not a lobbyist.
So pivoting off of that particular issue, off of the post-Surfside legislation, there's obviously a lot of other issues that condominiums are facing. This is not the only issue in South Florida we face on condominiums. It is certainly the dominant one, or the one that's been in the headlines the most. But we have a whole host of other issues. We mentioned earlier the price of insurance. David and I talk a lot about the cost of labor and the inaccessibility of associations, for instance, in a place like Sunny Isles Beach, of people who have to commute to get there. You've managed those buildings. You know it is not easy to find employees who,
you have people driving an hour and a half to get there.
So
making $15, $14 an hour.
Are these issues that you think CondoConnect is also going to dive a little more into, the sort of a broader set of industry issues that also need resolution?
Yes. We would love to, ideally, if you are managing a condo, let's say in Aventura, ideally you should live in the area. Managers and engineers for the property are the two most important people in that condo. In case of an emergency, in case of something happens, we are the first two people that the residents are going to call, that the front desk is going to call, security is going to call. We need to be there. And yes, I know friends that they live an hour and a half from where they work, and they're the managers.
Right.
So that is an issue on labor, but I don't know who wants to come in the industry. With everything that's happening, there is more...
it's a chilling effect, right? I mean, who wants to get involved right at this moment?
Like the board members, now you have more liability. Now, there is a bill that they're going to pass now where we have a little bit more of protection from board members that don't want to follow the laws. But
let me ask you another question. Are you going to get involved in communication with legislators about flooding problems, flooding issues, garages that flood, things like that?
It depends where the flooding is coming. Sometimes the flooding is coming from a city problem and not from the building.
So
itself.
do you let the owners talk to city people about the fact that the city water and the city sewer system is backing up into their, or flowing into their garages? Is CondoConnect able to assist by bringing commissioners and the mayor to meet with the owners when they're having these
city planners? Right?
Of course, yeah. We do have monthly managers meeting in cities like Aventura. Cities of North Miami Beach are going to start doing that as well, where we can bring the building department, where we can bring the managers, and so they can work together. They know what are the things happening at a city level and how is that affecting their condos. But a lot of those flooding... And you think that's more...
You feel that facilitates those conversations when it's more than one manager complaining about the same thing?
I really do think that. Yeah. I mean, when you have three people complaining about the same, and you have the city manager and you have the building department, they have to give you an explanation. And especially to get that conversation.
Especially if the mayor is sitting there.
Yeah.
Right, mayor or a commissioner. A state representative, a commissioner, or a senator, sure. So what are the other issues you feel like would be high on the agenda for CondoConnect? I mean, one of the things that I brought up when we were off air was technology. I mean, and I know that you've got a career outside of this that involves technology. What kind of technological issues? Because obviously, we see more and more being driven by technology in most industries. Condo tends to be a little bit behind the rest of the world.
Yeah, I think that has to do a lot with demographics. I was managing a condo in Williams Island, and we were trying to get everyone participate in online voting. I can tell you that maybe like 20% of the owners register.
Which, by the way, seems crazy to me, because who wants to actually cast a physical ballot?
I can tell you, the process. If you want democracy, the best way to do it for the people out there listening is to have electronic voting.
Absolutely.
Because you have people who are out of state, you have people who go away in the summer.
But it sounds like that has also not necessarily been received well.
It depends on the demographics. If you go to Brickell and your condominium, it's composed by
foreign Latins who
young
professionals.
But if you're in another demographics where they're not tech, they don't know how to use the phone.
They're not tech savvy.
They don't know how to use an app. They don't know how to download the app.
In fact, they read the newspaper and get newsprint on their hands.
That is true.
No one's that old.
Yes, they are.
I love with the investors that don't live here. They either, one, they don't care. And the other one is that these apps for online voting, you can only have it English and Spanish. But a lot of them are Brazilians. A lot of them are Russians.
Portuguese, Russian.
And they're never going to sign something that they don't understand.
Right.
I didn't know that they're only in 2 languages.
A lot of them are. I mean, look, there's some solutions
majority.
for
Yeah.
But still, you're right. I mean, I think it's that they don't understand it. And I mean, a lot of them just don't have the orientation to even know that these legal issues are being transmitted to them by email or application.
Right.
You know, they're not even assuming that.
Right.
How else do you feel like technology is evolving in the space? You know, I mean, as we see new buildings go up, I mean, one of the things, and I work with a lot of developers, you know, in fact, we were working on a filing budget just this morning, and, you know, we were talking about, do we ever still mention television in the filing budgets anymore? You know, you get the bulk cable agreements that, you know, we've all been a part of negotiating before, and it was cable TV / internet. And for the first time, it was the first budget that I've published that it just says data. That's all it says. It's just data, because we've essentially given up.
Because data is no longer just TV.
Right.
I mean,
but how are those aspects of technology? I mean, are you finding that more associations are demanding, you know, more internet bandwidth and speed, that there's more options and flexibility around that, enterprise Wi-Fi as opposed to just a pipe into the building? I mean, how are you seeing technology evolve in condos as well? I
mean, there's more people working from home. It depends of the condo, because if you have a condo hotel, you have a different
that's
need.
a good point.
You see, because
and there's a lot of new condo hotels.
A condo hotel that have people from South America, they need to have channels in Spanish,
right?
Or
Russian or Haitian
or all of those things. They don't necessarily. They want to have a streaming. They want to have Netflix there, stuff like that.
Right, they don't have to go through the programming things, right? Sure.
Or they want to have really good internet where they can work from home. I was talking to a homeowner that he does Airbnbs, and he was telling me that after 2020, they had to put a desk on every apartment because a lot of the people going to the apartment needed to work from home.
Right.
And they were requesting a desk. I'm like, okay. So definitely internet. I think we all need to be connected. But in terms of television, it depends of the demographic of the condo. Every condo it's different. If you're in a Jewish community, you may want to have different channels. If you have community that it's composed only by Brazilians, by Russians, by Argentinians, you have to provide or give them the option for them to have access to the channels that they're interested in.
Right.
So
what about resident-facing applications? I mean, you know, I kind of came up through condos in the era of building.
Resident-facing applications.
I'm about to explain to you and our audience. So this is not newsprint. Nothing's going to get on your hands in this.
Oh, that's good.
I came up when Building Link started getting really big, and then we've seen even local arrivals like O&R. We've seen other platforms like Lively that have traditionally been in the multifamily space beginning to operate in the condo space. How are you seeing that evolve as well? And I'm just imagining CondoCONNECT, you know, on all these issues, especially because you're so social media savvy, that this may be issues that are also creating awareness because it's a way for people to connect.
They are evolving.
I mean, CondoCONNECT could have its own app, CondoCONNECT.
Yeah, they are evolving. I know Building Link had now to get valet parking, to request tickets. They have bring other features that they didn't have before. And I think that's a different.
I think people paying in person at the management office, their maintenance, is going to be a thing of the past.
No, that's a dying breed.
I didn't have that. But normally they all have a website where they go and they pay online. A lot of what the managers we like to do is set them up on ACH payment. We don't have to worry about them.
Yeah, but 10 years ago, people would deliver the checks to the office.
Yeah, we don't see that much now.
Wait till they do it all on their phone.
They should do it on their phone. A lot of management companies uses application that is called ClickPay, which is great.
Right.
And you can change your app. You can put in automatic payment. It updates automatically, like if the maintenance change. So I think it's great.
Right. In terms of other issues, again, that, you know, from, I would say, insurance. I mean, insurance seems to be one that is going to always and forever affect us here in South Florida. That seems like something CondoCONNECT could absolutely be connecting, especially because we know the legislators are also working on that. I mean, the governor's office has been, you know, we've finally seen some softening in the market this year. It's probably short-lived, but we've seen a little bit of softening. Does that seem like something you would also want to have CondoCONNECT be a part of, connecting legislators and other industry professionals?
Be nice if you got some insurance people there.
Or I was going to say, open that ticket.
Yeah. We normally in the panels, we have attorneys, insurance, we have bankers, we have management companies, we have people that represent Community Association Institute. We have a little bit of everything. And the idea is that whether there is a concern or there is an idea or something is happening in a specific area of the industry that we can address. And if something is, creating a lot of concerns in terms of the industry and there is questions and the audience is requesting information about it, we will do it.
You mentioned attorneys before, and you're notwithstanding present company, not without exception. How are you working with attorneys? I've seen partners from Haber Law, and others connected with your events. How are you bringing them in? Is it sort of on sort of a practical analysis basis, and to say, look, again, here's the law, here's how it's been read, here's how it's been interpreted, here's how it's put into practice? What is it that the attorneys are doing in relation to CondoCONNECT, and how are they making, again, that connection with the homeowners?
The law, it's not as simple as it looks, right? So they help to understand. They help us to understand the law in a basic way, in a very simple manner, like you were telling before. And I think it's so necessary to have them because
especially the ones from Haber Law.
Yes, they're the voice the managers and the board members. You need to hear them. You should talk to them on every single decision you're going to make.
Now, I've heard over the years, there's a lot of boards who also roll their eyes when they hear about condo attorneys. They feel like, when we send every issue to the condo attorney, it just runs up a bill, and a lot of it's practical. They want the management company to, a lot of them ask management, hey, don't you have your own attorney who can give me? I don't know how many times I've been asked that. How do you respond through CondoCONNECT in terms of saying, so again, I'll use Marnie Reagan from Haber Law as an example. Marnie was at that panel that I was at in Aventura that you all hosted. And obviously attorneys are seen as expert.
Yeah.
But it's always, I think attorneys are always put in a difficult position, especially in public panels, because every situation is so different. I mean, with just the declaration of any individual condo can vary so significantly, even in the case of application going back to 4D of sort of saying, well, there's a specific set of circumstances in terms of opt-outs that are driven by the declaration that are sort of, end around the statute.
I always say it's penny wise and pound foolish not to include your attorney because, and I use this example, you don't want to spend the money to have the attorney review the construction contract. You're going to sign a contract for $15 million. And if you don't use the attorney and you don't have someone who's board certified in construction law reviewing the contract, the next thing you know, you're in a lawsuit over $10 million because you didn't spend $10,000. It's crazy.
Right.
It's just bad business.
Right. Right. Is that some of the stuff that you're beginning to touch on in CondoCONNECT?
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. It sounds crazy, but it happens. It happens in multi-million-dollar projects here in Miami Beach. Like we have seen it where they think they know it all and they are smart. They are, but they don't know the industry.
We had a litigation over a 2-page proposal for multi-millions of dollars. It wasn't even a contract. It was a proposal that they signed.
Well, let me ask you both something then, and kind of get both ends of this, both on a community basis and from an attorney perspective. There are so many special assessments being passed. There are so many construction contracts that are being created. There are so many new points that need review. At what point does your industry, David, begin to get pressed around timeliness because everything has to be tomorrow? I've certainly worked with hundreds of boards over my career, and I know that everything has to be tomorrow. How do you feel like you're still servicing your client? Then I'll ask you a follow-up on that. When the demand is that high, I mean, I got to imagine, you think you have 40 associates, but
we have 40 attorneys, right. But the reality is you have to balance the client's needs of various clients, and you have to try to educate the client as to what is an emergency and what isn't an emergency. You also need to communicate.
To them, it's all an emergency.
I know,
right?
But you need to educate
that guy hasn't paid his maintenance in a month and a half.
You also have to educate the client as to an appropriate time frame to negotiate a contract. It's very funny. I always find they take 2 years to decide to do the assessment. They take 3 months to get the funding for the assessment, and then they want the contract done in 3 days. Even though it has to go to the general contractor's attorney, there's got to be back and forth. You have to communicate with the board as to what's a realistic time frame that it could take 10, 15 days to get this contract done. Because once they finally decide they're going to run, they want to hit the ground running that day.
Right.
And it just doesn't work that way. You don't sign the contract on day one. You have to literally negotiate terms like bonding, surety, insurance, where they're going to store the materials,
and then the back and forth.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Then the revision.
Is there back and forth on unit pricing and things like that?
Yeah.
Well, Daniela, let me ask you then something, because this to me seems like, even if it's as an extension of 4D, yet again, is CondoConnect doing any kind of forums or summits? And if they're not, it sounds like it could be a good idea to say, okay, well, now that we're having to deal with this issue, and now that we're having to negotiate so many of these agreements, and we're having to deal with so much special assessment, just now saying, okay, we're taking for granted what has happened with the law. Now we need to teach you how to follow up on it, and like what those steps, those 1, 2, 3s, and to create timelines. Because I think people are, David, really skewed on timelines. They don't understand how long it takes. Is that something you're educating?
Yes. So, and not only me, there is a different groups in Dade County that are having lunch and learns. They're having webinars, the in-person events, talking about construction, how to negotiate contracts, insurance, all of these topics.
We do webinars on these things with BNA and with the BHA.
The board members and the homeowners that want to know about the topic, the information is there for everyone, and it's free for everyone.
Right.
Like right now, I think it's unreasonable, and I don't think it's appropriate to say, oh, I didn't know about this. If you didn't know about something happening in the industry, you just were not looking into it. You didn't do your homework. You're not involved. But if you're in the industry and you want to stay ahead and you want to know what's happening, you have the information to read, to listen, to go to events, and all of these events are open to the community.
So I hear that, I guess, and I'm going to ask you this because I think this is actually very particular to you and CondoConnect from what I've seen. And David, you peripherally, because you sponsor a lot of those events, and I, full admission, Haber Law does a great job that way. But it also seems like when we're trying to connect a younger audience, let's be honest, part of the genesis of this show was to make these topics a little less dry, because these continuing education, these webinars, these events, you just finished a long day at work, and I'm going to go log online and spend 2 hours listening to 3 attorneys talk about, the dry application of this stuff. And it may be very cogent.
That's why
how do we invite people into this information?
My shirts.
Well, your shirts are definitely leading the charge in that. But seriously, and Daniela, I'm going to focus on you because demographically, you are the future of condo owners here in Miami-Dade and beyond. How do you make it more interesting, more inviting? I think CondoConnect, I will compliment you. Those are pretty interesting events. And I think, you get up close and personal with the senators, and, it's, if nothing else, it's entertaining to see them respond to the audience. But a lot of the webinar stuff, I'm just going to say, is pretty boring.
Don't say the Haber Law.
I'm not saying it's boring, but I'm saying, listen, for somebody
the subject matter is difficult to swallow.
Somebody who's 32 years old, who's deciding between going out to drinks with their friends and sitting and watching a webinar, I'm going to give the edge over to to the vodka soda. I'm just saying.
Vodka tonic.
Well, we have the lunch and learns, it's a great space where you can connect with other managers, that you can connect with professionals. You can enjoy a great meal, and you get educated. Right. Managers also get C credits to go to those lunches. We have the networking meeters for managers where they just can go and network with other managers.
But I think what Josh is asking is, how do you get the younger crowd of owners and board members?
Yeah, and I think owners and board members for me are more pertinent, because clearly, look, I mean, managers may not all be as educated as you are, but I think managers have taken their responsibility more seriously, either by dynamic of the law because they have to and they're more responsible for it, or because they take their job seriously, or both. But I think when we're talking about owners, and we're talking about that big jump demographically that you said from that, the retired, Hollandale Beach, condo owner to the young, professional brickle homeowner who may even have more absolute dollars at stake. I don't see a lot of participation there. And so I'm curious, how do you get that younger generation who is now going to be dictating this industry more engaged that way? And social media, maybe that's the big part of the channel.
Yeah, I would say tag. They love the podcast. We love podcasts. I listen to podcasts.
I didn't know what a
hours.
podcast was until I did my first one.
I did to explain to David, actually almost live on the air, what we were actually doing.
But I now know what it is because I do one.
I think this is a great idea
and now
to engage with them
as well.
Yeah, I think this is a great idea to engage with them and do something more modern. To me, I love the in-person events, but the younger crowd, they may like maybe no webinars, but maybe like a live show or something more like this, where it's a conversation.
So you're going to put us, you're going to connect with us on Instagram and LinkedIn for Sun, Sand, and Soul, so that your 20,000 followers now have access to this information.
I don't think I have 20,000, but.
Well, and look, and some of it we realize, we are in the TikTok era. And so, a lot of our most prolific watchers and listeners are listening to Reels, right? They're seeing they're seeing 45 seconds of it. And some of it is to say, okay, look, in 60 seconds, can we give somebody something that's interesting enough to digest to then get them to either watch a whole episode or go to a CondoCONNECT summit or whatever have you?
We need more of that. We haven't get that updated. We're not that updated.
It's punchy.
That soundbite. So I'm going to give you.
Maybe we need to do it at like Space or 11. Like we got to move this into more of like the nightclub era, and
so
like
here
a DJ
it is.
Lunch and learn.
Here it is.
Drink and learn. Does that work?
Speed round. You ready?
Oh.
Well, all right. So we'll pause in the speed round. I got one more question for Daniela before we subject her to this torture. So I would like to know what the future of CondoCONNECT is in your mind. What does that, and by extension, my famous question, what does CondoCONNECT look like in 5 years in your mind?
In 5 years, we hope to have reach out other markets like Central Florida. We're working right now with someone in Chicago. Maybe we're going to start doing something in other states where, again, the concept is to create a space where elected officials at a local, county, a state, and the legislators can participate on issues of that community.
Right.
And I do see it growing. My goal is that the people that are going there are getting a benefit from it, that it's never the same. I like to bring to them an experience. I want them to feel like, oh my God, this is an event that I will come back. Not only because they're being nice to me, because I'm connecting, because I have seen people that I didn't see in like 10 years. I had a manager that he told me, oh my God, I see so many friends that I haven't seen in so many years. So they have that opportunity to connect and educate the community. And educate the community.
So then my follow-up question, my last question before I turn it over to my esteemed colleague is, I ask this of a lot of our guests. If you could change one thing in our industry, one thing, and you get to wave a magic wand and have it be completely different, what would that one thing be?
It's a little controversial.
I'm ready. Let's go. We love controversy. This is about to be a reel. I can feel it.
I will eliminate the conflict of interest disclosure. I would change something there.
Now you got to expand.
Change what?
I was going to say, you got to expand on that. That's too good.
Because think about it. Everybody, if you're a board member, right, and you have a business and you do the disclosure of conflict of interest, which is there is a process by law to do it and properly do it. You're not going to do it because automatically everyone will point at you and crucify you and saying you're stealing money. Now, management companies, right, they own other companies. They do the disclosure of conflict of interest. They get profit from it. But if an owner that has part on the community, that it's volunteering his time to be a board member, and that genuinely have a solution that can contribute with what he knows. Let's say you're an attorney and you're a board member in your condo, right? And you have the knowledge
that would never happen.
To help the community. at a better price, we're crucifying these homeowners for that.
Well, that is controversial.
That is controversial.
And I definitely disagree with you. I think that the people who are making the decisions as board members should never be involved with the business of the association.
But then if that's the
other
point,
than as a board member.
I agree. But I agree with that too. But if that's the point, then make it illegal.
I
Don't
agree
open
with
the
you.
room.
I agree with you.
Because if you make
I
it
don't
illegal,
agree with, I don't agree
it's
with
illegal.
I don't agree with the concept that you can disclose it and then do business. I think you should not be. You either get off the board, you either get off the board, or you're on the board and you don't do business with the association, period.
You know what, this is interesting because this used to come up a lot when in my early management days, which was yesteryear, but this used to come up a lot around board members who were realtors. Because there was this sense of self-service in, if I can keep my condo rates lower, I can
sell more. I can sell more units.
And so at what point does that go from being coincidental to working in the space to being potentially manipulative from the inside out? Is that
that was a great
inside?
Not as bad as the one where one board member once said to me, "How much do I get paid?"
My point,
how do I make money?
Is that there shouldn't be a disclosure of conflict of interest. They should either make it illegal or have a way to do it properly.
I'm into making it illegal. I think it shouldn't be allowed to be done. Go do business with other condominiums. Don't do it with your own.
I agree, but then there is this.
It's the old shit where
loop where. If somebody wants to do it, can do it.
And an edit worked its way in. I think we're going to that'll be the first bleep that we've actually had to throw.
I don't mind a bleep. Don't shit where you eat.
Great, but make it illegal. That's like
my
only point. Like there shouldn't be a gray area where you can do it, doing legal, because regardless, everybody, their concept
they think you're stealing
illegal.
anyway.
Yeah. So just make it illegal.
I got to say that was one of the better answers to my question that we've had. Anything that sparks debate, I think, is great. Therefore, I'm going to pivot over to the great debater himself, who is going to ask you a series of very fast questions, and hopefully they pop out quickly here.
I have to get ready.
The rapid fire round. Let's see what he's got today.
Favorite color?
Blue.
Favorite sports team?
I don't have.
Favorite sport to play?
Swimming.
That's because you were a high school swimmer. Yes. I happen to know that.
Yes.
Favorite place to visit?
Any beach.
Favorite type of food?
Sushi.
Favorite sushi roll?
Volcano.
Wow. Nice. She even knows she wants the volcano roll.
That's the really complicated one with like fish on top.
No, it has lobster. It has lobster, doesn't it?
Yeah. It has like a whole tower on top.
That's like an American sushi. That's like the equivalent of fettuccine Alfredo.
Favorite shoe?
No.
You don't have a favorite shoe?
No.
Okay.
You're just making fun of me.
I'm not making fun of you. Yours is Ferragamo. You told me yesterday. And so I wore Ferragamos in honor of you today.
And now we're going to have a constant running shoe segment. This came from a pair of shoes I wore to a party at David's house recently, and I said Ferragamos yesterday.
Yeah, but Louboutin, those Louboutins were unbelievable.
I've got the Nike Sakai's on today, so this is a Japanese Nike.
I'm more into bags, not shoes. Sorry.
Okay, yes. Favorite bag?
Hermes.
Ooh. And the last question, favorite car? If you could have any car you want.
I like the Porsche.
Which one?
I don't know. Any
Porsche.
Hermes and Porsche.
Hermes and Porsche. Okay, you heard that out there. Beautiful, smart young lady who wants a Porsche and a Hermes bag. The good news about Daniela is she buys her own stuff and she is a self-made woman.
Well, that is great news. And you can see more and hear from her more through CondoCONNECT. We're going to have the links up.
And LinkedIn.
Yeah, we're going to have the links up on the screen. In the meantime, Daniela Marquez from CondoCONNECT, it's been so great to have you on the show. We appreciate your time and we look forward to more participation, hopefully again with us in the future. In the meantime, good luck to you. You are watching Sun, Sand, and Sold. I'm Josh Tomey with David Haber, and we'll be right back.